All right, guys, welcome to class 6, the final class of our summer education series. These topics were handpicked by East End Oils when we crowdsourced, and this last topic is kids' emotions, brains, and fostering safe connection. And I was actually a little late joining tonight because my son, Jackson, who's almost 10, asked me, Mom, what are you teaching on tonight? He's like, how did the whole thing go? Is this your last Thursday? Because this is like a thing where we have to cut the day short in the summer, right? For me to show up and teach. And I showed him all the topics. And then he said, oh, are you going to talk about me at all? And I was like, mostly Ryan. And he was like, this is so Ryan. You're going to talk about Ryan the whole time. And I was like, you guys have to stay in your room with the door shut because this is like a not only am I going to be sharing like how much this resonates with me, pouring into you guys to have regulated nervous systems, right? Fostering safe connection with yourself. But then also you're going to be able to pick out like different things that are going on with each of your kids. And I want this to be just like a beautiful framework that's actually really gentle, very non-judgmental for you guys to work from. So I am going to be talking about a little bit about my kids and myself. But I went through the PowerPoint with Jackson, a couple of the slides, and he actually affirmed, right? Because I threw this together this week. He was like, that's a really helpful thing, Mom. So for a kid that is, I would say like 7, 8 or older, like the tool that I'm going to show you guys is actually something that you can use in your own home. That actually has nothing to do with oils. Okay. So we're going to talk about oils tonight, but the actual tool thing doesn't. So let's just dive in. I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share, of course. I'm going to hit present. Change this. Actually, can somebody just affirm that they can see this? The thumbs up. Okay, cool. So there's the title of the talk. All right. So a couple disclaimers. I am not the parent of your child. So I want to say that right off the bat. Every parent has to make their own decisions. And I would not want anyone to feel judged. And I really don't want anybody that's listening to this recording or on this class to think about, oh my gosh, look at all the ways I've been doing this wrong, right? Or look at all the ways I've been doing this right. Like, I don't want anyone to leave here feeling judged. I want everyone to leave here feeling super empowered and supported. I am not an expert. I am not a child psychologist. I am not a perfect parent. I have messed this up so many times because I also, right, haven't been connected with myself, and I've been parenting from a place of complete dissociation and disconnection and frustration and all of the things. So this class, I kind of crammed a ton of stuff into this PowerPoint about a few things that I've been learning that have really been changing the way that I think about my journey. And then that's also informing my parenting, and especially with Ryan and also with Jackson, but their need for connection. So um, I'm going to be talking about something called polyvagal theory. I'm going to be introducing our vagus nerve to you guys. If you haven't heard of our vagus nerve, I'm going to be talking about it. And I'm going to be talking about a theory that describes exactly how our nervous system functions. So how did I get here, right? Like, this is kind of a new emerging thing that for the past couple of months, I have been listening to podcasts, reading books, digesting a ton of information. It was a couple of months ago that I was on Instagram really early in the morning. I had woken up and reached for my phone. Again, really bad habit, right? But reached for my phone and I stumbled across this reel, and it literally said like Stephanie Somatics. And I was looking at her reel and I was like, I resonate with this so deeply. And then I started looking at all of her content and I was like, I could have, should have, whatever. My brain was exploding with like everything that she was talking about. It was so simple, so profound, and it was just all about our body. And so I looked at what she did, somatic, right? Soma, it's like the study of the body in a therapy. And it's an entire field of therapy that, to be honest, you guys, I thought I made up. Okay. I looked at the certification program. I looked at the techniques. These are things that I do with my clients when I coach them, because they are how I actually healed my own nervous system. And it's entirely a field that exists. Like, my brain was both somewhat like exploding. I had imposter syndrome. I felt like I needed to go get another certification. And I also felt very validated. Like, does that make sense? Right? Like, extremely validated in everything that I was reading. So I just started eating it up. I was like, okay, now that I know that what I do, which is like pretty much like a third to 50% of how I work with my clients, actually has a name, right? I was reading about it, digesting information, and through that, actually the book that the manual that you get when you go through the certification process really introduced polyvagal theory to me in a way that made complete sense. And then I had remembered that Andrea's niece, Bethany, some of you guys probably know her, had mentioned this to me like a year and a half, 2 years ago, that she was learning all about polyvagal theory. And so I met with her and she gave me even more resources. And I'm just so grateful. So I wanted to give her a shout out. So our autonomic nervous system, and I talk about this all the time, like fight or flight versus rest and digest. And I wanted to start here because until this class and also last week's class, I have been always presenting oils as they enter our olfactory bulb, right? And they have a direct, unfiltered route to our amygdala, which is like the alarm signal of our nervous system. And the amygdala is kind of like this thing that like signals like, do we need to flee? Do we need to fight? Are we safe? What's going on? Right. And so I've only been ever thinking about it in terms of two switches. So sympathetic, like turned on, ramped up, right? Like respiratory, lung, our chest is beating fast, our heart is beating. And then everything in terms of rest and digest actually gets turned off. So this is why, just really simply, in America, we're walking around with chronic stress. We have so many digestive issues in this country. We don't actually have digestive issues per se. The quality of our food, that's a whole nother issue, right? But what we actually have is like chronic sympathetic nervous system activation, where our body is basically telling our digestive tract to stop working because we need all of our energy to flee, fight. So we need our energy in our muscles, all of those things. So you can look at all of the things that are not happening for us, right? Just like as adults. So when we're in rest and digest, we have salivation, right? Where we get hunger cues. We digest appropriately. Our entire like our bladder and our colon and everything functions. We also can be sexually aroused. None of that is happening when we're in this fight or flight, right? Like we're just stressed. So we need both for life, but ideally we need to be in parasympathetic like 80% of the time, because parasympathetic, this is the only place that our body and mind can heal from. So when we're walking around in chronic stress, all of the things that's necessary for healing physically, right, cannot happen. So here is where I'm going to enter the vagus nerve, the gear shift between sympathetic and parasympathetic. I've always talked to you guys about it in terms of our amygdala, but it is actually our amygdala, which does connect with our vagus nerve. So vagus nerve, it's cranial nerve 10, kind of runs from our brain down through our body and innervates with every organ, okay? Our vagus nerve is actually the switch. So you can think of it as olfactory, right? Vagus nerve, it's connected to the amygdala. The amygdala is the part of that like primitive brain that's actually doing the work. And then there's a ton of signaling that's going on. So this signaling though is actually 80% body to brain and only 20% brain to body. So if you think of this in terms of everything that's going on in our environment, right? Everything that our nervous system is sensing, it's all our body. Okay. Think about like kids, how much they move. They're like really trying to understand their environment, right? Their body is sending signals to their brain. And then their brain is kind of like organizing it all, right? And making decisions what to do. So the vagus nerve is the primary communication channel between our brain and every organ. It facilitates this two-way communication. And in response to the signals coming from our body, our brain then releases the messengers, the hormones, the neurotransmitters that are regulating everything. So up until this like 8-year journey in doTERRA, I have never introduced the vagus nerve. And I am so thankful to be able to do that finally. All right. So because of the vagus nerve And studying the development of the nervous system, there is something known as the polyvagal theory, okay? And so this theory is basically an explanation of how the vagus nerve not only develops, but how it works to upregulate and calm our nervous system. So I'm going to take some time to walk you guys through this, share a little bit more, and then apply it to just like practical things that we can do. I'm going to just see if there's any chats or anything. Nope, no chats. Okay, so this is a polyvagal chart. And I have a simpler diagram of this that I'm going to show you. That's the tool. But for right now, I just want you to stay with me. So up until now, we always think about fight or flight, rest and digest. But there is actually 3 states, okay? We have this kind of basement state called ventral vagal, okay? And ventral means belly, like front side of the body. If you think of a dolphin, okay? I don't know why I think of a dolphin every time I look at this chart, but I think of a dolphin. So ventral is like belly. So you think belly to belly connection, okay? Eye contact, true social engagement, all right? The ability to be curious, the ability to be open to feedback, the ability to be compassionate with other people, mindful in the present, right? Think about your kids when you see them like this, right? This makes sense. They're settled, they're not frantic. When our nervous system is aroused, right, it is headed into sympathetic, which is where flight or fight is happening. So flight or flight and sympathetic nervous system activation, like we need that, right, to get things done. We just can't stay there all the time. So I just want you to think of this as a flow, right? Rest and digest, calm, connected, all the things, and then flowing up to like jumpstart, kicking things into gear, right? And then returning to home. So the health of our nervous system and the health of our vagus nerve, you can think of it as how quickly or how efficiently are you as a human, just think about you and your kids, right? How quickly are you able to return to home? Because we are always going to fluctuate. So fight or flight, this makes sense, right? We have anxiety, we're irritated, we're frustrated with our situation, we're living in worry and concern, little bit of panic, little bit of rage. When our nervous system is hyper aroused, we go into what's known as dorsal vagal. So dorsal is backside of the body. So again, think dolphin, the dorsal fin. And you can think of this as actually physically turning, right? Turning away from the humans in our life, okay? We are no longer able to connect. We are actually numb, like wanting to numb out or numb, depressed. We are like a state of helplessness, okay? Shame, all the things, and dissociation. When I see that word dissociation, it actually makes me cry because I lived so much. I would say the majority of my adult life until the last 3 years actually dissociated. I was like body present, but mind elsewhere. Okay, there was a huge disconnect. So this is, you can think of this freeze state, dorsal vagal, disconnected. There's a lot of reasons why this happens, but you can just think of it as survival. It's basically like so much is stimulated that this is all you know how to do. And it's like the lowest state that your body can be in to like simply stay alive, but you're not able to do anything. Okay. So there's more information on the right, and I'm not going to take time to do this. If you want a copy of this diagram, you can take it. But I think all of us, right, can imagine and see a situation in which we have gone through all 3 of these levels, right? And then also watched our children go through all 3 of these levels. So just to get really personal about Ryan, Ryan is like the most social, like just engaged, excited, encouraging kid. Okay. He was born with torticollis. So he had a head tilt when he was little. And so he was, for the first like 2 years of his life, kind of stretched and done therapy like against his will. And I didn't know what was happening. Like I tried to force up, I think of all this stuff, I'm beating myself up. Like I tried to force a pacifier on him. All he wanted was his fingers. Like it was just a different kid than Jackson. And also went through a divorce, right? At a younger age. And so there is definitely this sense for him in which he doesn't want to do things that are not in his will. Okay. So when you're forcing him to do something he doesn't want to do, it's almost like he goes straight from social all the way into dorsal. Helplessness, laying face down on a couch, like sometimes screaming at me, sometimes just like silently sobbing, because he's like, you're not even listening to me. Like he just feigns helplessness. And until I really began to understand this chart, I got so freaking frustrated with him. I feel like when I was a kid, if I would have done that, and I think this is true, was like, it was not tolerated, right? It's like, snap the heck out of it. You do the right thing. And so I have done that to Ryan, and sometimes it works. But here's the thing, I have seen how I think it's actually doing more damage than good, because it's even putting him more in a place where his back is up against the wall and he's not in connection and he's not happening. So I haven't fully cracked the code on this for him, but the balance between this dorsal vagal to ventral vagal safety, you cannot just go from one to the other. You would think that you could, but this diagram, I love it because sympathetic is always in the middle. So the easiest way to say this is, if you're in sympathetic and you want to get down to social, ventral vagal, when they're hyper aroused, you see them getting hyper aroused, or yourself, right? You have to think about like, what calms me. But when you're all the way in dorsal vagal, right? Helpless, numb, depressed, dissociated, you have to go through sympathetic to get back to social. So this is why, like, I always thought that this was a cop-out as a parent. I'm just going to admit that. This is why when a child is helpless, numb, dissociated, shut down, like total brain, like it looks like all the lights are off, like tickling them and doing something that gets them like to laugh and to engage, like to actually activate their nervous system a little bit, is the key that gets them back into social. So if you've seen that happen for a child in a small way or big way, can you just put that in the chat? Because I don't think I'm the only one. Like, I have watched this happen with Ryan a lot. And now that I know how the nervous system works, I'm like, this isn't a cop-out, right? Because I feel like I should be angry. There should be a consequence, like he shouldn't be allowed to do that, whatever. And then like tickling him and making him laugh, it's like I'm making light of the situation that he's just been completely disobedient for like the last 10 minutes, but it's actually how our nervous system works. To get from freeze to social, you have to stimulate it. So I just think that that's fascinating. So I wanted to tell you guys too, if you have children that have gone through significant trauma, right? Like a passion of mine is foster care, because my best, like lifelong best friend, she's adopted 3 kids out of the foster care system. The first part of this nervous system switch, polyvagal theory, to develop is actually dorsal. Okay. And that didn't make sense to me, because I'm like, no, that's like a last resort. That's like a thing that we learn how to do when we have trauma, but it's not. That's like the lowest amount of energy that our nervous system can be giving us in order to be surviving, right? So do you see here how on the right it says decreases? Your heart rate is decreasing, your blood pressure is decreasing, your temperature is decreasing, your like facial tones, eye contact. So it's basically like reptilian. You're just there. So that develops first in how your vagus nerve develops. Oh my goodness, my power just went off. Am I going to lose internet? Hold on. Mom, we lost power. I know. Okay, we're back on, but I have to make sure that this. All right, so the development of our nervous system, right? After having gone through this chart, the first to develop is dorsal, like I said. So that's primitive reptilian. Okay, our sympathetic nervous system, so that middle, right, heart rate, respiratory rate, that develops at week 38 of gestation, which I think is really interesting. So if your child was born premature or earlier than 38 weeks, right, and needed some support, there you may notice like this difficulties in that, like, moving between states, and possibly that's why. Ventral vagal So connection, safety, the ability to attune, right, to another takes 2 years to develop. And this makes me cry because children that were not held, right, either didn't have a safe place to land, didn't have a home, or quite honestly, parents were too busy, right, to really spend time like nurturing, holding, and being, or parents who themselves did not have a regulated nervous system, right? I'm thinking about my own kids there. My nervous system is not regulated until I would say the past year of my life. I feel very different now than I did even in 2021. And I wouldn't have known the way I feel now was possible until I had gone through all of this like intentional healing work. So that first 2 years. So to develop our nervous system, like we at first learn, we learn, right? Ventral vagal learns in the presence of co-regulation. So it requires another human to learn how to regulate. So if that doesn't happen, then we're reliant upon self-regulation, right? And self-regulation is hard to learn as a child. Attachment theory is a whole study of this, right? So if you have people who are avoidant attached, right, they tend to retreat back into themselves, safety, even though that's not like a great place to be. They don't really love being alone, but they don't know how to regulate their nervous system when they're around somebody because they never did that, right? That's avoidant attached. Or we have to learn how to self-regulate later in life. And I will say that I actually had tears in my eyes when I thought about my own journey, and I thought about how, some people self-regulate, they're avoidant attached, and I tend to be more anxious attached, right? Like, are you going to love me? Are you going to stick around? Do you see me? Who sees me? Can I go find somebody who sees me? So I still was only in like sympathetic, searching to learn how to be in ventral vagal by using, and I'm going to say using, that's a strong word, other people's nervous system to try to regulate my own, right? I was searching for the co-regulation that for whatever reason, I just don't think I had as a child. Okay. So I was going to this person and this person and this person and this person and sort of having like frantic, deep, oversharing conversations, right? And that was also like, it's still not true connection. Do you see that? So true connection, social engagement, this requires calm, regulated nervous system to calm, regulated nervous system. My nervous system was in sympathetic, right? At minimum. And I was going to other people who may or may not have been in ventral vagal. And I was trying, I didn't know this, but I was trying to get in ventral vagal by having all of these conversations. Okay. It actually made me who I am, right? I know a ton of people. I welcome a ton of people in any church context I was ever in, right? Talk to a ton of people, make friends at parks, whatever. And I just never looked at that as a way that I was actually trying to like be seen and comforted. So if you have a child, right, and think about this, like it can kind of go two ways. Either they need to go alone, think of that as like introverted, right? We can think of this in terms of our nervous system. They tend to avoid, withdraw, go into their room, right? Slam the door, go into their room, need to be alone to come back down into ventral vagal safety. Or they may be like just the social butterfly. And I want you to watch, like, is that because they're trying really hard to regulate themselves, or is it they're totally in ventral vagal and they're able to pour into other people, right? You may not know that for a child. I'm just reflecting on my own journey here. So 2 years, the first 2 years of a child's life is really critical. Okay. So my kids are older than that, right? So their nervous system is somewhat established. And now I am working in a totally non-judgmental way for myself, right? But like working to establish true safety. So when I walked Jackson through this diagram, just to be really personal here, I was sharing, like he was basically saying, like, I see Ryan doing all three of these. And I just shared with him, Jackson, I see you when you ask me to watch TV or play your Switch. I see you wanting to dissociate and I see you wanting to numb. And I said, you ask me more. Okay. I was like, your parents are divorced. You ask me more the days that you go from dad's house to mom's house, right? And also vice versa. And he got tears in his eyes. He got tears in his eyes because he knows that that's happening, but he got tears in his eyes because I was so, I see you. I'm the parent. I'm watching this. I'm watching you carefully because I love you and I care about you, right? I'm watching how your nervous system functions. So then I actually jumped right to, I'm just going to jump right here to this chart really quick. I'll go back. But this is the chart that I then showed him. Okay. So this is a tool. It's known as the ladder. It's developed by a clinician, Deb Dana, who is she's kind of like the clinician. She's taken all of Stephen Porges's, all of the polyvagal theory and applied it to the clinical environment where you're actually working with patients. And she's developed a ladder, which allows her, right, to like paint this picture, handing a ladder to her patients and saying like, where are you today? Where is your nervous system today? How is your nervous system doing today? Right? See how different that question is than just like, how are you today? Right? It's like letting you be the observer of your nervous system activation levels rather than feeling you're at the mercy of them. And so I just said to Jackson, I said, so where are you right now? You know, you're sitting on mommy's lap. And he was like, oh, he's like, I'm safe, right? I'm engaged, I'm social. And then he just like pointed to this ventral vagal. And again, this ladder is also so important because it also, again, paints a really, really clear picture that it's not just jumping from one to the other, right? To get from dorsal back to ventral, you have to go through sympathetic. So don't forget that about your kids. Okay. So our social engagement system, I'm going to bring this up just because, so cranial nerve 10 is our vagus nerve, and it's directly connected to 4 other cranial nerves, which are our eye gaze, our facial expression, our voice, and our head movements. So those 4 nerves, right, and those 4 outward things are our social engagement system. So this is our best friend when it comes to sending cues of safety to our children. This system, not only for us, but also for them, it sends and receives signals of safety or danger, okay? So social engagement system, this is only online. So eye gaze, facial expression, voice, and head movements, engaging with another person is only online and functioning when somebody is in ventral vagal. So if you're not anchored in ventral, the system is closed to change. So the easiest, most practical way I can describe this is by just a situation I've been in a million times when my kids were younger is like taking them to a coffee shop. Okay. So I'm walking into a coffee shop with a friend and I have my kids and they're running around and I'm asking them what they want and I'm trying to talk to my friend, right? And then all of a sudden, like my kid is like touching something that they weren't supposed to touch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have prepped them better for expectations while we're in here. And then they're not obeying. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a guy sitting over there trying to work. Is he judging me? What's the barista think? Does the whole place just want us to leave, right? Like my nervous system is like, going through the roof, right? Trying to connect with my friend, feeling disconnected from my kids, giving them instructions of what to do, but nobody is connected, nobody is listening, and obedience is going out the window, okay? So that happened to me several times. I now know, right, if I prep my kids before we go anywhere, connected with eye contact, like this is what's going to happen, this is what we're going to like, this is how long we're going to be there. I love you so much. I appreciate you guys tagging along with me on this friend coffee date. Like, I know it's not ideal. I know you'd rather be outside, right? That's me in ventral vagal connecting with my kids through my social engagement system. If that doesn't happen, and again, if you've been in this position, please just put it in the chat, right? Your nervous system is activated. You're in sympathetic, maybe even headed to dorsal. And this is the way I describe it. Mommy's voice is talking to the children, and they're not listening because it's not actually mommy. Does that resonate with you guys? It's not actually mommy giving any of those cues because it's not her in ventral vagal. the greatest gift you can give to another human is working on your own nervous system, how it's regulated, and knowing that you have a way, you have a strong nervous system, and that you yourself, as a mother or a parent, know how to come home. Okay. I just love that. This is just how it works. Okay. So if our social engagement system is not open, right? We're not in ventral vagal. How do we get it open? Okay. It's really important to think about that, because if we are just try to like take our kids, they're not in ventral, they're in sympathetic or dorsal, and we're just trying to get them to engage. Okay. You're actually not fighting. You're not fighting against their cortex, their like brain. You're fighting against their entire nervous system state, and their nervous system is always going to win. Okay. So when this language I pulled from a podcast, like noticing like, oh, this is a dysregulated moment for my child, saying that is actually so safe. Like you don't say that to them, but you're saying that to themselves because you're noticing. It's actually so safe, and it's so non-shaming for the child. Okay. So we want authentic connection. We don't actually want, although it's necessary sometimes, like just a child who's completely compliant all the time, because that's also not authentic. It's actually a way they've been trained or taught to like circumvent the whole system by just being always just obedient. Okay. Because they're still really not like truly in ventral vagal, like grounded, present, and then able to pour back in. Okay. We all know here what it's like to truly feel connected with our children and to not feel connected at all. So why do oils matter? Why does doTERRA matter? And this like just honestly is a little bit emotional for me, you guys, because I have talked so many times about the fact that our olfactory system, right, of our senses, that our sense of smell is the only sense that has an unfiltered route to our amygdala, right, which is like the smoke signal of our brain. But our olfactory bulb is actually the only place where our vagus nerve directly meets the outside world. Okay, our vagus nerve runs right from our brain into every single organ. So I want you guys to let that sink in. The impact of using essential oils is not just on mood. It's not just on behavior. Because it has a direct way to stimulate that vagus nerve, the impact of changing aroma and stimulating the vagus nerve has effects that are far more profound than in my 8-year journey of doTERRA I have ever given them credit for. Like this is changing everything for me about simply aromatic use of oils. Not talking about internal right now necessarily, not even really talking about topical use, aromatic use of essential oils. Like I don't know a single person that's afraid of that, right? So incredible. So when we stimulate the vagus nerve with essential oils, okay, because of the innervation, it improves digestion, improves cognition, can relieve insomnia. These are just some of the things, right? Combats inflammation. It's literally talking to our body, supporting our immune system, strengthening our memory, speeding up detoxification, reducing symptoms of depression, decreasing anxiety, calming stress, improving gut health. That's a big one. Okay. Regulate appetite and weight gain, increases adrenal health and boosts energy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, like this is like where all of the crazy claims that people are like, oh, just smell an essential oil, you're gonna like feel amazing. Okay, no, the vagus nerve is a real thing, and the only place it intersects with the outside world is through our sense of smell, right? Think fight or flight. This makes sense, but it's actually connected. I just, in my mind, you guys, I just didn't have like the biological way that it was actually connected to our whole body. And our vagus nerve is that thing. So here's the ladder. I already went through this. And so I just put together, in addition to using the ladder, I listed some simple things that we can actually do daily with our children. So the first thing that I think is important, especially if those first 2 years, right, were not so great, is a sense of agency. and a way to start to listen to our body. Remember, 80% of the signals are body to brain. What's going on in our body is so important, and we can use our nose. So just have your oils out and like make it a routine, a daily practice, 3 times a week, whatever it is, maybe before bed. Like, hey, what smells good to you today? Like, what's your favorite one? Like, make it a game. Okay. Like that's one of the things I love to do with my kids because I love oils and how they smell. And I am constantly fascinated by how sometimes certain oils smell good to me and sometimes they don't smell good to me. And the same is true with our kids. Like it will change. So make it a game. The second thing is presence. And so that's talking to us as parents. Okay. We get to learn to be. This is crazy hard in today's society, multiple children, schedules, all of the things. But the greatest gift we can give someone is a regulated nervous system. My clients say this to me actually, is like they love the time just being with me on Zoom or being with me. And I just like the only thing I can think is over the last year and a half, I've learned to regulate my nervous system. I no longer let like the behaviors of other people mean something about me, right? I used to be very codependent on the facial expressions of somebody else, the feedback that I was getting from them, their words of affirmation or the reverse, right? Like needing that. That was me like trying to co-regulate with all these different people. And over the past 2.5 years of really being alone, honestly, like alone in my apartment, alone on holidays, alone on walks, I've learned that like powerful like way to need to self-regulate. Okay. So the third thing is connection, connect with them. So ways that I do this with my kids, right, is I apply oils to their spine before bed. I massage it in. I offer them aroma touches. I've done Symphony of the Cells, right? Like not lengthy things, massaging their feet with oils, and then just being like figuring out the time of day when a child is going to connect with you, right? And again, my kids are at an age where we have like verbal connection. If your children or grandchildren are younger, right? Like establishing this in the first 2 years of their life, rubbing lavender into their toes, being connected, making eye contact, making sure your full social engagement system in ventral is connecting with the eyeballs of that child is literally such a gift. So I don't have any specific essential oil routine recommendations. I thought we could just put those in the chat and actually talk about them at the end of this class because I think every kid is going to gravitate towards a different oil. So like peppermint generally perks people up, lavender generally calms people down, but like I like this idea of agency and like my kids each have oils that they gravitate towards. So like Ryan, the thing that I put on his back every single night, and he created this blend. It's a blend of equal parts Copaiba and Balance and a tiny bit of rose. Of all the 30 oils that he smelled, those were the only 3 his nose wanted. Everything else felt gross to him. Okay. Like including the ones that everyone loves, like Citrus Bliss. No, he wanted Copaiba, Balance, and Rose. Okay. So whatever oils you have, and I can make recommendations if you need them, whatever oils you have, just let your children pick. You'll be able to tell. So what's coming up for you? We can stay on for a little bit and chat like your past, if your past, right? Your first 2 years of life, your childhood, I do not want you to minimize it. I grew up in a very stable home with parents who are still together. And yet they were both getting PhDs, like my first 2 years of life. And I was in like a daycare at our neighbor's place. And so I don't know, I don't remember, right? But I'm sure I was not held by my parents like a ton. They were in PhD programs. So that's they did the best they could. And I was not okay. And I think it's really okay to say both. Our current state, right, is a result of our past and also intentional healing work. So you might be sitting here listening to this class like, oh my gosh, I don't even have time to think about regulating my nervous system, right? Like, I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. I'm saying it's going to be worth it to be intentional about that and to be using oils ourselves. My smelling, my agency, letting myself determine what smells good to me and what doesn't. What do I want to put in the diffuser? Like at first, that was such a little thing, but guys, it was literally part of healing, right? Soma, my body, my nose, the choice, the routine, okay? My body mattering, establishing that helped me be more consistently in ventral vagal. And when I get dysregulated, I know how to come home now. And then for your parenting, right? I believe it really can and should be informed by this theory. This chart has been hugely helpful, and I believe it's a gift. This whole thing is a gift. So take a screenshot of this slide if you want. It's resources. Deb Dana wrote a book called Anchored. It's for all of us, right, in understanding this. There's 2 podcasts that Bethany had sent to me that especially this Deb Dana part 1 was really, really helpful in informing even what I was sharing with you guys tonight. Attachment theory in kids in action and how that's related to our vagus nerve. And then that latter photo, I took that screenshot from this last article. So those aren't actually links. I guess I could have put the actual links in here, but let's chat. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm actually going to stop the recording so that we can just chat.